How's it been? Are you in Riyadh just
How
now?
are
How has it
you?
been for you
How's
during
everything?
this?
My first time to do live.
Oh, mine
Yeah,
too.
I'm in Riyadh at the moment,
It's
and it's been interesting. Interesting times. I
yeah,
think lots of reflection, and
yeah.
I don't know. It's just I think our whole life has been redefined with what's happening right
It
now.
has been,
Yeah.
and
Like shame. I mean. There are like a lot of deaths in the world and everything, but I just hope this will stop at some point and we'll just go back to
yeah.
normal. I mean, now like we're almost in
I
one
don't
month.
know whether we're gonna have a real normal in that
Yeah,
sense. It's not
exactly. I
going
mean,
to
the idea
be
of normal, the whole idea of normal, I think
normal,
it's
and
been
it's gonna
just
change. Yeah,
changed and it's been just really
yeah.
interesting and how like everything now kind of shifted to virtual as what we're doing now.
Pretty much, which is what we're doing right
Yes.
now. Everything is going online. I mean, it's just been.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything is being
it's pretty
online.
much redefining everything that we
Yeah.
do in every
And I
way
just feel like
possible.
it's kind of a new of self-expression. Being
Yeah,
we have all this like, we only have this kind of screen. And this is kind of our frame right now in our life to communicate with the world.
yeah.
And it's super, super interesting. Yeah. And how are you holding up?
And I think it's been, I think, well, so far, since you're safe, I think you're almost just
Oh,
lucky
big
that
time. Yeah.
that's, I think, one of the, yeah, and especially the fact that so many people are stuck outside of their homes and not having food,
Yes,
not having a place
absolutely.
to go,
Yeah.
or losing people who are so close to,
Exactly.
it's quite
Exactly.
scary. And I just to imagine that it was almost a year ago that we were
It's unbelievable.
at Delfina together at this time, and it's I think you're just so lucky to have that time as well. And
Yeah, I mean, like really,
yeah,
whenever I look back to the pictures of us in London, and it feels like it's ages
yeah,
ago, but it's like, a couple of, almost a year now. But it just like
yeah,
we're living kind of different realities right now between what
yeah,
happened actually in our lives and now. And it's very
yeah,
interesting that people are just being very nostalgic. Like a lot of people like looking into old pictures, like really, really old pictures when they're
yeah.
kids, and it's just they're just, I think it's our mind trying to comprehend all that at once, which is not really easy. Honestly, it's not easy at all.
And I think it's ended up being a reflection of some sort for so many people as well, because it's not only about, it's in a way revisiting and
Yes.
going back to
Yes.
things, which is something I think you did as well in London last year, because it was your time to come back for research after 2012 is when you were studying
Yes,
there.
yeah, I studied 2011, graduated in 2012 in the University of Westminster. And
Yeah,
yeah, it was a kind of quantum leap. And I'm glad that I've done my MA in London because it's kind of very diverse in relation to look into arts and the form of arts, especially photography, with all, the museums, the libraries, the archivals. I'm so glad that I managed to have access to all these during my MA, and also me looking into the medium of photography from another perspective completely.
and it was quite different what you did during your master. Because I remember talking about this was a lot of it was to do more around photojournalism, where you were looking at observation and at people in so many
Yes.
ways, which was very different from what you did when you were there last year.
Yeah,
And
drastic.
no, sorry,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
it's
Yeah.
it's a it's kind of completely different, and we're talking, I mean, 2011 and 2020. So we're almost talking about like
Yeah, that's hello. Oh, I think we've lost Marwa. Wait for her to come back. But maybe while we're waiting for Marwa to come back, I've got some of well, I'm going to try and get Marwa back and see. Is it sorry, is it my connection? But while we are waiting for Marwa to go back, I can maybe take you through some of Marwa's works over here. Um, Marwa. Okay, we have Marwa back.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry, I think we
Yeah,
lost you
I don't
there.
know. It's connection, I guess.
No, but you were talking about your work when
Yeah, I mean,
you were in
yes.
London, yeah.
So, the
And
transition of being kind of a commercial photographer, which is like something I really, cherish, to be honest. And it was part of my experience and, me being a photographer. And then turning to the other extreme,
yeah.
which is basically going for the no aesthetic in a photograph, or to, just framing reality as is, even going towards
Yeah.
symbology within photography. And I think for me, for my mind to transit from that mindset to that mindset, it wasn't an easy, to be honest, but it was quite really interesting transition. Yeah, I think, as we're looking at these images, these were from Mood Diary, from my major project in my MA, which basically talks about the topic of mental health in Saudi Arabia, specifically bipolar disorder. Uh, and where I managed to follow this Saudi woman who was courageous enough to come forward for this project and be part of it, and to expose her very intimate private life. And it was to me, it was kind of shocking because I had kind of to break a lot of walls in order to reach that core of the topic itself.
Yeah.
There was a lot of concern that I might not make it because it's not really easy to go that intimate into people's life, and having, like, because we end up doing the whole project in her house, specifically her bedroom where she hates the most. Then I
Right.
managed basically, with large gear, which is my camera, to
Yeah.
basically if I can say, how can I say that, but like, to penetrate her private life.
Because
Yeah.
it's something which you also mentioned when you were talking about how you shifted and how you had to place the camera as almost being this invisible being in the
Yeah.
room, but at the same time creating these images, which also meant building relationships with people, which is something that's very evident in all your works about how you look at a person and how you look at pretty much everything inside out in that sense.
Yes, I just loved kind of the progression of my relationship with the camera, and how I can manage basically to utilize it as the position of the spectator, and how to make, to humanize the camera and to be able to observe all
Yeah.
what's happening in my surroundings or in the subject matter surroundings. Because specifically in relation to photojournalism, it's all about the communication between the photographer or the photojournalist with the subject matter, which is not really something very easy to handle. And there's always the fear of the camera and the fear of what the story or the narrative that you're gonna basically convey to the public. It's a major, major, huge
Yeah.
responsibility, and that's kind of the first thing we've learned during our course: how to convey and be responsible about the story that you're telling, and be responsible.
I think the responsibility of the lens is something that really comes in for, especially when you're looking at photographing somebody else, or where you almost become, in a way, the person who's conveying another person's story. And when you said you were photographing mental health and in Saudi Arabia, where something that's not been maybe spoken about or discovered, and also somebody's life in that sense. But I also see how that shifted in your personal work when you shifted into film still photography into also using video and performance. And in one of the performances, which I'm just going to shift to again, is here in We Were, where you put yourself in the work.
Yeah. Which is like until this moment, I can't believe that I've done that. But it's another way into looking to my relationship with the camera.
That's Marwah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, for this performance, it was kind of I like to push myself to out of my comfort zone each time, and I like to kind of swim in different pools, if I can say that. It's not easy to push the boundaries, because the idea in your mind, I mean, sounds so logic, but again, when you shift to reality, things completely drastically change. But I mean, it's amazing looking at these images right now, V, and remembering when I was brainstorming it, researching it, and even sketching it, because most of like my recent videos work, I mean, I start with a sketch, I start with a storyboard, and looking at them right now, I was like, oh my god, how did I do that? How did this happen even? But it's again a relationship with the subject matter, including me in this context, being in this frame with all these people. There were like 35 men and women participated voluntarily, and I'm really thankful for them to be part. But there's a beautiful, I mean, process to do this work. Is just starting with the idea of doing workshops and doing like kind of a group therapy, because we sat down in a circle. And I mean, that project was commissioned by the Saudi Art Council, whom I'm really thankful, who've been like supporting me a lot through all sort of my career in the past 5 years now. Yeah, so I mean, specifically Her Royal Highness Princess Jawahar bint Majid, all the Saudi Art Council members, and the Saudi Art Council director Nada Sheikh Yassin, all of them, they kind of, you know, been pushing us as artists in Saudi to go to the next phase and being exposed to the international sphere, which is, you know, at certain, you know, mid-career. I mean, we're artists and kind of mid-career, so it's not really easy for us to be suddenly conveying our own expression to a larger audience. But with this specific project, yeah, I mean, we started doing these workshops, talking about the idea of loss, the idea of like how people keep going back and forth in our lives, or just like maybe leave permanently our lives. And suddenly, like, I found how much it was inspiring for me to listen to all these people's stories who are participating, because I felt that they need to be more, you know, sort of in sync with the concept that I'm trying to, and plus the camera will be very intimate. And I was trying.
But I think what's important in all of this, while you're talking about the others, it's also about yourself and how you put yourself in this video.
Positioning. Yeah.
And just coming to terms with you putting yourself in this, because for later works that we've seen and some of the others, you've been able to maybe go through this experience because of which you're able to create work without putting yourself in that. That again goes back perhaps in some way to the ownership of the lens.
Yes.
Which you spoke about earlier.
Yes. Yeah, I believe it's just, I mean, it differs from one project to another. So it depends on how do you perceive it. And I really like to engage the audience to kind of relate to their own personal experience. So positioning myself in front of the camera I was aiming, I don't know if it happened or no, it just, people can put themselves in my position in that context. So it's not particularly about me or my personal experience, about like more global narrative, if I can say, in that context. So it was, I mean, during the exhibition, it was projected life-size kind of, and anyone would stand in the middle would be feeling the sense of all this happening, this intensity, this connection, this vagueness as well, that we are always constantly trying to figure out what, I mean, all these kind of human relationship and connections and how it's kind of affecting us either positively or negatively.
And I think when you're looking at human relationships, the work which you made right after this album was, it was a 3D map projection on a
Yeah.
building, but it was very different from human interaction in that sense, which again is different from the work you created after. I'm just going to take you again through some images of that. It's brilliant, yeah.
Thank you.
Because here it's almost where the building becomes transparent in some way, where you've given life to this building. But it's quite different from the works you created before this and after
Yes,
this.
it's quite, I mean, it's my first kind of public art. And also using the medium of 3D projection mapping, I mean, to communicate all this, again, language, visual language to the public, to the general public, using the projection mapping through this beautiful building. And again, it was commissioned by the Saudi Art Council with the support of the Ministry of Culture. So, I mean, yeah, it was, this was kind of transitional. It was not easy for me to go from a very, you know, me and the camera, me and the subject matter in a video, in a photograph context, to a really huge, massive canvas, if I would say. I can call this a canvas. I mean, I've researched street art, I've researched public art during my MA and during like all my practice. I was very much kind of enthusiastic and like intrigued about the idea of a public art and how you communicate to the general public. Again, there is the aspect of responsibility of what type of language that you're trying to convey to the people. I mean, specifically in this project, Al Bund, where it's located in the historical part of Jeddah. It's a 140 years old building. It was built during the Ottoman Empire. And then late King Abdulaziz built a pavement because, I mean, insanely enough, the sea was reaching that building. So that building was next to the shore of the Red Sea.
And the history is something you've brought back in. I remember you telling me about this, which you projected. Was this the projection of the history of the building?
Yes. You know, when the Saudi Art Council approached me and they were like, we would like to do something with that building to make sort of, to do a revival to the building, because it's been kind of neglected the past couple of years. Again, I felt like, wow, this is really huge. And there's a lot of aspects, there's a lot of elements that I need to consider. And then, you know, setting or, you know, to lay out a visual language that's kind of understandable, yet very minimal at the same time. So I started the kind of a visual story with the idea of like the sea reaching out the building, and then, you know, basically metaphorically covering the building. And then the boats who've been sailing, bringing all the pilgrims to Jeddah at that time. And then because that building at that time was transferred to a medical center to do a checkup for all the pilgrims before they've been transferred to Mecca. So you can imagine how,
which is what you have done here.
Yes.
Yeah, the pilgrims walking around the building.
Yeah, and I wanted to do some sort of like an inside out to the building. Yeah, inside out to the building, where you can sense what's happening inside that building. What's basically all this, you know, valuable kind of, you know, the whole building kind of hold a very valuable element to the culture and to the history itself. So pilgrims, as you see, comes in, and then you can see inside out. And then, yeah, and then after that, I end up, and then highlighting also the Ottoman architecture with an outline that covers the whole building. Yes.
You see in this one here.
And then ending with a poem by Abu Nawas, which was the poem he wrote after his last trip to Hajj. And then even you can sense like the type of calligraphy that I've even chosen for this. It was like a typing machine calligraphy. I didn't want to kind of over exaggerate. I just wanted to be as minimal as possible and to communicate the idea of why I'm doing this, why we are all doing this. because of just showing them the huge importance of that building. And it's really, really beautiful from the inside as well. Like, it's very minimal and very like authentic at the same time. And I'm so glad that it's still there.
Yeah, that's amazing. But again, bringing that back to when you talk about research and history, and I'm going to come to what you did right after this, was which is when we met in London when you were working on your most recent work, which was with reference to
Yes.
biomimicry. And I remember you spent so much time with theater groups, with performances, with dance groups. And you spoke about workshops earlier, but in London, you were also spending a lot of time just
Yes.
observing them for your
Yes.
research.
Yeah, I mean, my residency in Delfina, it was really a stepping stone, you know, honestly, in my career, and also to boost this project, and also meeting you, all these long nights,
Likewise.
conversation, and yeah, I still remember our conversation in Delfina's library that night, and showing you all my work. And how you also had your own reading about, how I'm basically framing everything as from the perspective as a photographer, which is this
I
brilliance.
think a lot of it was about how you've constantly
Yeah.
shifted and moved from using the lens and
Yes.
technology and even just the camera
Mhm.
itself, which I think we'll see in this work, because there's a point where you move from the camera being silent to where you put yourself in
Yes.
front of it. And then what we'll see in this work is completely
Completely
different
different.
from,
Yes, it's
yeah.
just yeah, I mean, I did my research. I was chosen again by the Saudi Art Council. It was an amazing exhibition. I mean, curated by Maya Khalil. The theme of the exhibition was
Mm.
biomimicry, and how we can be inspired by nature in terms of creating a sustainable solution for humanity. And I mean, the concept itself kind of was very inspiring for me to dig deep and research and see how can I would translate that through my practice. Because I mean, biomimicry has been heavily used in architecture and design, but like within myself doing, my camera and performance, how would that be applicable, if I can say?
Right.
So, and then through my research, I was suddenly, I mean, drifted towards the idea of, or the topic of defense mechanism implantation and human beings and species. And I was really struck by all these kind of how nature been capable to protect itself. And I think
Mm.
now talking about protection with the time we're living right now is just like an idea that's horrifying us day by night. Like, how can we protect it? Is it the mask? Is it the gloves? Is it? So I mean, I really look back to this project right now. I feel that I'm reliving it again, and I called it I Lived Once. So
And I was just going to say that the title of the work, and even for the way you address things in this, it's as though it was made to address a time that we are going through right
yes,
now.
yes. Which is completely different times. Like, so yeah, I mean, I was
Yeah.
I was researching about the idea of protection and defense mechanisms and resistance, and I was very much drifted and inspired by how these species and plantations managed to protect itself, and within ancient methodologies. Like, nature's been there since, millions and millions of years, and been adapting, protecting itself over and
Mm.
over. And nature, because of familiar, and we're not really kind of interacting with it that much. But maybe me personally, and I'm always drifted or attracted towards the idea of the unseen, and how to make the familiar unfamiliar again, through the camera. So into the mimosa plant, how it protects itself, looking into the honeybees, how do they do this shimmering wave? It all has this mechanical move. It all has this dynamic and very intelligent, systematic movement ongoing to survive. And until this moment, we as humans still struggling to, comprehend protection. What is protection exactly? How can we protect ourselves?
And it's still something that every time we think we've reached a point, something comes back and
Yes.
questions that all over again.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because, yeah, it's just the dynamic of life, the cycle of life, like how we are
Yeah.
adapting, how we are basically communicating with life, and how we are
Yeah.
comprehending pain, processing pain. It's just one whole cycle. So I wanted to do this bond and connection between us as a human and these plantations. So I felt that there is a possibility to build a bridge between performance and these mechanical movements. And here where I started, my research kind of drifted somewhere else, going through theaters, performance and film, or dance and film. And I had like a huge list of visual references. And then being in Delphina was a great support. I really thank Aaron.
I'm gonna switch to, well,
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
we're talking about Aaron, who I know you were talking to about this, but when you talk about uh, the way you were looking at workshops, this work begins with almost with an experimental way of looking in some way.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I know Aaron also helped you get in touch with a lot of
Yeah,
dance groups and theater
yes.
groups with his background in performance
That's
and
true. From
as
our
well. Yeah.
first session, we had like a 1 hour session, and it was amazing. I mean, he's so inspiring, and I love how his mind works. It was so flexible into looking into things. And I remember this and I mean, I ended up my slides, like I showed him my proposal, and he was like, "That's a performance workshop." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I loved the twist that he advised me with, is just how can I channel the camera, sit by like using the camera as an actual existing element of the work, or part of the context of the work, and by that how we can make the camera be actually I mean, performing actually with the performers. uh,
Because no, I feel especially with this work where, again, at this point where the camera begins with how you initially started working with
yeah,
it to becoming a point where it's looking down upon perhaps something that's
yeah,
happening, but then all of a sudden the camera becomes an individual where it's being
yes,
attacked. I mean, this is just brilliant because there's nothing about trying to hide the camera or the gaze moving away
yeah.
from the camera. It's where
And
it becomes the center of the
yeah,
entire work
and
itself.
honestly, like, I'm so glad that I went with Aaron's advice by basically, I mean, putting the camera in the position of the attacker. That made a
Mhm.
huge difference, even with the performers, who I need to really thank. Those amazing women and choreographers as well, Lamis Siddiqui and Jawahar Rafai, and amazing 14 powerful women who managed, I mean, who had a lot of capacity and patience during, again, we did a lots of workshops, and to basically also observe the idea, observe the concept itself, into making it into reality, because it's too much. It's a lot of like, it has a lot in terms of like film production, legit film production, and performance itself.
Right.
You do want to lose, the balance, and it was so hard to balance between this and that. So,
Yeah.
and then for them to also I mean, with the, I mean, Lemis was on the ground as a choreographer, and the progression of these movements, because I went through the idea of, or the concept of, movement direction, not choreography. It was not really a dance, it was much more a repetitive movements,
Mm.
rather than just a fluid dance. And then there is a lot of emotions held into it, because they had to live the story. And I mean,
Yeah.
those women, like, you can see in front of you, like, I'm looking at these images, although, like, I know these images by heart, but each time I look at them, it's like, wow, how these amazing women like managed to to give me kind of this capacity with my madness and believe in this. I love them all, and they've done a great job. We've
Absolutely.
shot 2 days, 7 hours each day.
I remember speaking with you when you were in the middle of this production, and you mentioned how much endurance and grit it took just to keep going for those many hours, and how much it meant
Yeah.
to give every day to reach this point where, I mean, you also see how dedicated they are and how the camera is being addressed with, I mean, just the expression of looking
Yes.
back. There's nothing about not looking at the camera or pretending it's not there.
Yes.
It's at the center of this
Yes,
work
and
entirely.
it got really intimate to their, to their zone or
Mm.
to their space. And it was really, I mean, to me as an idea, I was really worried because I want them to feel comfortable the most, especially this was new for all of us, for me, for them, for the crew, the camera crew as well. To literally, I worked with an amazing DOP, Carter Cage. I mean, he was literally holding the camera and then just drifting and pushing the camera to the woman, and like, and they were fighting it. It was an amazing dynamic.
Mm.
Looking, even remembering how we did that, it was really hot at that time. It was really warm. It was like
Wow.
November 8th and November 9th, 2019. The sun was really, I mean, was there. So it was really challenging from very different from different perspectives, because I was worried about the momentum of the women, how these amazing
Mhm.
ladies, and how they would be, sort of to give more, because they're, when talking film production, it's takes, a lot of takes. So
Yeah.
one of the takes I remember, like this late, was like there was like number 10. We took
Mhm.
10 takes for one of the shots. So
Oh,
imagine
wow.
they did it 10 times, and I'm so grateful.
No, and it's also very intense
So
because
yeah,
when you go back to the energy and you see the
yeah,
work, it's
absolutely.
um it's not like it's something that's easy to do over
No,
again
it's not.
because there's
Yeah,
action
and
through it. There's this constant addressing of each other because there's also this sense of coming together, which I think you see especially in this
mhm,
scene, where there is so much coordination, but the moment it comes to going back to attacking something,
yeah,
about how it's just this way of pushing in some
exactly.
way.
Yeah, and
And at the end again, when you come back to it, it's almost
calming, more
where
calming, and
you calm down and they move away from the camera and it goes back to the
yes,
tree,
yes, yes. Um,
which is
Thank you
beautiful.
so
Yeah.
much. I mean, even writing it as a film treatment, because you have to go a bit technical in doing short films, and yeah, it was really interesting writing the story, and with the help of the choreographers and their imagination as well. I was so pleased to share my mind with them, because they see in movement. I see visuals, they see
Yeah.
movements. Like one of the work, like one of the brainstorming session with the choreographers, I was just literally reading the treatment, and Lamis and Jawahar were literally
Mhm.
doing the movements. So it was an amazing
Wow.
way of translating the language to verbal, into human language. Sorry, into a body language. Yeah,
And
into a body
yeah.
language. And literally, I was reading, and they were just doing the movements as very where they feel. There's a lot of feeling into this. There's a lot of like unspoken language. Um, yeah, it
Absolutely.
was
Yeah.
really challenging.
And it's so relevant to the now and the future again in some way.
Yeah,
I mean, this entire work and what you just said, it's very relevant to that. And this work, when yeah, and this this work, you said it was being exhibited when the lockdown hit, and it's
yeah,
still up.
yeah, yeah,
And it was on a very large scale
yeah,
because we also spoke about how you were going to project this because one of the things which when you were researching it mentioned you didn't want it to be you thought a lot about how the projection would be the tree itself, but then also how the camera was moving into being the tree,
mm-hmm.
and the scale at which you were going to project it also meant people felt like they were
Yeah,
being attacked by the attackers or by the
yeah. I
performers in
mean, with
some
the
way.
great help of the Saudi Art Council and the amazing Maya Al Khalil and Daniel Makul, like the way they kind of again transit this video to a much more engaging, interactive space. and it was projected on 8 by 5. It was so huge. Or 8 by sorry, yeah, it was 8 by 5. Yeah, it was so huge, and they created kind of a space, and I mean a curved wall, well, where you feel more intimate and more engaged and interacted with the work. And then also the sound has a great element, working as well with the amazing Nasr Shmemri, who did the music score for this project. The sound made gave another layer, because the first segment of, I mean, the exterior part of the interior part of the film, I focused a lot on the sound of their breath and the repetition. There was no
I remember
music. Yeah,
that.
it was very kind of intense, and it was challenging as well to manage to sync the sound, and recording it during the film, and then sync it in the post-production. So all these technicalities, it's just amazing learning process. And then transiting to the exterior part, or where the nature comes in as part of a huge element of this work, it was another kind of dynamic, with the sound evolving, getting more into atmospheric sounds and experimental kind of music. Yeah.
No, but I feel also the way you address the sound and the camera, and how they become individuals and in a way performers in this work. It also makes one think about how we need to be perhaps more mindful of how we are looking at things coming to us, rather than just choosing what we want to let in. And I think that's something what we are facing right now,
Absolutely.
because we can't see what's coming in. It's just happening.
Yes, yeah. I look at these images right now, V, and it's completely, it speaks to me different, like, sort of dialogue, or different language. How we, the 14 amazing women, like, been completely attached to each other, and there is like no space between them, and now we're distanced, completely distanced. But it's just insane to look into that. All of them next to each other, standing, holding each other, hugging each other, hugging the tree, being so close, a couple of inches away from each other. And now is just another whole idea of being with people.
And like we said, when we go back to being what the new normal is going to be, it's going to be so different from what we thought normal was. We're going through this transition where we really don't know what the future is going to be when we are back out there in some way.
No, it's completely.
Hopefully,
we've been having this conversation with a lot of my friends, and what is the idea now of kind of redefining life, and what is what just our mind trying to comprehend. And it's amazing that we as a human being, like, we adapt easily. It was very fast adaptation. The first 2 weeks globally was really tough and hard, but now is I think people are just adapting easily, communicating easily, expressing easily. But I just hope for this to be over and get back to normal and be with our loved ones.
I hope so.
But I think for us creatives, all of us around the world, are just figuring out how they can express. And I love what all my friends are doing right now on their Instagram and social media, how they're interacting to each other, how they're developing new form of expression. Even if myself, I could not really express till this moment that much, but seeing others being able to made me really relief, because it's very challenging for us as creatives,
Yeah. No, it's true. And I feel also just now, I've been having conversation with you, with some of the other artists, and while it's easy for some, because it's just led to how we create differently, or whether it's creating, whether it's writing, whether it's responding, there's so many who are stuck in a space where their work is out there on the field and they just can't do anything. So it's also about trying to think of how to use your time or how to do something. And I think we're all going to have to rethink what of how we live again
I think
tomorrow,
so.
really, and use our
Yeah,
time.
it's been strange.
Yeah.
Like I,
Well, let's hope
I
things
like I haven't
improve
went out to the
soon.
streets
Yeah.
since like I don't know 2 weeks, 10 days. I can't even remember.
I
But yeah, I mean
know.
it's the case of all of us, I guess, right now. And I'm just like I just
Yeah.
hope it will be over and no that much of loss. Honestly, that's what makes me worried, and that what makes me like panicking at some point of like we do want to lose more. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I'm just glad that the governments are trying their best, and it's not easy. Even with the e-learning or the school, I mean, being in sort of classrooms through
I think there've
Zoom,
been so many.
it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it has been
Yeah,
online, like we said
yeah.
earlier. But I'm just being a little mindful of the
Okay,
time, Marwa. I think maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions
sure.
before we wrap up. And I don't know if somebody has some questions, if we've got some in the box down there. If
You guys have
okay,
any
no,
questions? Thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you, thank you, thank
I know
you.
everyone's spending a lot of time with whoever you're with.
Yeah,
It's been a lot of family time as
yeah.
well, but
So if anyone
it's
has any
yeah.
question, feel free to
Thank you for
ask.
being here.
Do you want to transform to the Q&A, or is it already Q&A? I don't know.
Um, I don't know if anyone's put any questions in the box there. I
Okay,
don't think so. No, not yet. So then I guess yeah.
maybe a couple of minutes.
Well, yeah.
uh, but
So
yeah, I mean, I really thank Tribe Magazine and Soraya for this
yes,
chat.
yeah, thank you,
Thank you
Soraya.
so
Really, it
much.
was I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, now I remember Soraya called and said, "What's been happening?" Because also Marwa and I have both done an interview. Well, it's more Marwa's work, but a lot of it has been a conversation which has been carried forward from when we were discussing things last year, which is in the next issue of Tribe.
yeah. I think we're having
So yeah, hopefully once this is through, it'll be back.
yeah we're
Yeah.
having.
How are you dealing with creative writers' block in these times?
How are you dealing with the creative writer's block? Oh my God, you just like hit like the point. Yeah, I mean, creative writing in general, or writing in general, is being personally for me is being difficult, and I've been discussing this with my beautiful friend Tara Dreither and my beautiful friend Sarah Abu Abdullah. The idea of writing and how can we sort of conquer that. But I think I was advised by V the other day to just record whatever you feel. Maybe it makes it more easier. You don't want to overthink it because it's too much what's happening right now. It's too much in the mind. It's really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you feel the idea of like you want to achieve, but just sort of sit back, breathe. It's too much for the mind. You don't need to feel that it's a block. We're all now locked down. There is a blockage all over the world, but I mean, just take your time and breathe it out. I don't know if I answered it correctly. Do you have an answer for that, V?
And I think, I mean, like you said earlier, one of the things which I feel when it comes to writing, it's different when it's writing something for an article
Yeah.
or for something that's going to be published. But I feel at times like this, you also need to write for yourself. And when you start writing formally, it's not always easy to just put things down, which is where maybe just recording or talking ends up being an easier, informal way of then transcribing it into thoughts that
Yes,
expand.
yes, yes. That's very true. Because
Yeah.
you're a writer yourself, so
I mean, so that's how I deal with it when I'm thinking of how if I want to deal with something that is just for myself to reflect on something else. That's
yeah,
how I
yeah.
look at it. There's some more questions in the box which I'm just going to bring up. Does that
Hi,
come up? Yeah.
Tara. Hi, Moro. I'm wondering how. Yeah.
Protection
You want to read it? V, go.
viewed at this time. Hi, Marwa. I'm wondering how protection is viewed at this time with social distancing. How can we connect and protect each other without the physical?
Wow. That's really huge, Tara. Yeah, I mean, it's beyond, I think, again, it's a very personal point of view. I think the protection now is far way beyond like wearing masks and gloves, because we're dealing from something internally. I mean, like, it depends where you know, generally speaking, where all these people are being locked down, you know, it's not always pleasant. But I think we need first to, I think, acceptance, but it doesn't happen easily. It takes time to accept the idea of being in this situation. I think what we're doing right now is literally talking to each other every day and every now and then, us as friends or family members, even texting, like just a simple text, how are you? How are you holding up? You know, that's the viral question, how are you holding up? You know, from time to time, to your loved ones and your friends. I think that, I mean, personally, when I see this text from any of my friends, I feel kind of very calm that I'm not alone, because it gets into you. You know, it's really way beyond our. Sometimes it goes really beyond our capacity to understand, because we're dealing with the unknown and we're dealing with the uncertainty all the time. So I think just these
And
simple
also, I think the
gestures, yeah,
situations, yeah. No, and also like both of us spoke about this, is how the situation you are in the space you're in, is something that you're not used to, because it's so easy usually just to go out or move
yeah,
away from it, that you don't end up addressing it so often, which is something that you don't have a choice to not do at this point.
exactly, yeah. And then also the idea of like self-confrontation. You are with yourself.
Yeah.
um, or like you are with your family every 24
Um,
hours, you know, it's just completely different, completely different. So I hope I
yeah.
answered your question.
There are a few more, Mara. I'm just going to
Sure.
go through these. So there's one which says, what do you feel about photography in the Gulf, and any more move from pictorialism to making photos with meaning?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the Gulf is rich right now, honestly. The Gulf is rich in terms of understanding the medium itself. And I'm not talking now, I'm talking like 10 years ago, for this kind of, you know, revolution movement about taking good consideration about your camera and the medium of photography and the images and the idea of imagery that have been developed
Mm,
highly in the Gulf. I mean, the UAE, Saudi, Kuwait, Bahrain, they've just like really, all the photographers, they've been creating these even amazing networks to how to develop the medium itself and the idea of making more meaning to the images. I mean, we're having an amazing Gulf photojournalists right now, even here in Saudi. And I mean, you can see them now sort of, you know, how they are communicating their subject matters, even like with the use of social media. And such a powerful photo story has been coming up. It's just amazing, and they're working so hard. It's not easy to convey stories from that part of the world, because you've been perceived differently from different part of the world. But to be a photojournalist based in Kuwait, Saudi, UAE, it's not really something that's it holds a lot of courage. And like I shout out to all my friends who've been practicing more than me, to be honest, photojournalism as the idea, and writing about it, and documenting what's happening. It's just beautiful.
we have time for a couple more questions. Wait, this is, yeah.
Where do you get your inspiration from? Is that a question? Yeah. Oh
Yes.
wow, a lot of from a lot of places. um, I mean, people inspires me a lot. Talking to people is so inspiring, honestly. I love having endless conversations with my artist friends. I love how our minds are just seeing things differently. Um, I was inspired by UV, honestly. I'm not saying this as a compliment, but
I
yeah.
think, no, but I think it was a lot. I was just going to say it was a lot about how our exchanges, and
Yeah.
I think you end up feeding into how each other's research
Yes.
works based on these
Yes.
conversations. I mean, for one of the things that I always say, that artists are like libraries in
That's
some way,
true.
because there's so much that you end up getting to know about from an artist, because you're just
Beautiful.
tapping into so many more sources from what your
Yeah,
research
that's
is.
very true. That's very true because like I believe in the idea of time. Time in the creative world is completely different. That's why we I
Yeah.
mean yeah, how can I say that? Like I mean the concept or the notion of time is different between a creative to another in terms of looking into things, because we tend to look into things into different layers, and that's to me very inspiring. Like looking at you right now with the divided, you know, screen and people are
Screen,
interacting,
yeah.
I see this as completely, you know, in different layered perspective. uh, because it's I mean we can't just disregard things, we just keep looking into them, we keep just trying to
Yeah.
analyze them. Another inspiration for me is just like as much as possible I would like to, you know, enrich my eyes, especially right now. I get in my inspiration from music, definitely, films, definitely, performance, dance. I love just listening to people sing. I keep pushing my friends with talents to dance and sing in these times. It's just amazing to get something out of your body. It's like an out of body experience. I love the streets of every city I go to. I just keep taking lots of photographs and videos. Yeah.
I've seen that with 5 cameras
Yes,
sometimes,
exactly. I
Marwa.
work with I worked with a lot of cameras and architecture as well and design. Like I love looking into buildings. How can a human interact with the human interactions with architecture is really really interesting. The idea of
Yeah.
space as well. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, which well, there are two. I'm going to just read them out because there are two of
Okay.
them. There's one, I'm going to put one on the screen and I'm going to read out another, which is what makes a good photo story a moment? And is it insensitive or appropriate to create artwork that directly responds to the pandemic?
Hmm. Okay, the first question, I think it's a combination of both, because a moment can create a story, and a story is a moment, and it's all about it's all about like taking a photograph in the right moment. You know what I mean? With a
Yeah.
context of a huge narrative or bigger picture. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think it's a combination of both always. Yeah. And the other question,
Is it insensitive, appropriate to create artwork that directly responds to the pandemic?
I'm. I think it's. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it depends on how you personally is intersecting with this and how we're experiencing the idea of the lockdown right now, or you know, being anywhere stranded in the world. You know, a lot of people are expressing already. A lot of people are responding to the pandemic and the fact that they are away from their loved ones and they're just alone.
Mm.
And you know, it's very harsh time, so it is accumulated in our subconscious. I mean, honestly guys, whomever like listening to me, are you having weird dreams? All of us are just having weird dreams because
I think it's such a personal
I think,
response
yeah, I
to,
mean, it
because
depends. It depends completely
I've
how.
been speaking with so many artists, and some of them are creating works about the pandemic because they feel that they need to, but then their work is also about responding to current situations where they look at it immediately and feel like they need to
Mhm.
create. But for some, it's also this process where they need to go through something before there's an output. So I think that really
It really
depends on
depends.
each person and the experience you're going through at that
Yeah,
moment.
it really depends. Thank you, Fahad, for this question. But I mean, a lot of people are just now considering doing, you know, artworks about the pandemic, about the coronavirus, about the idea of being isolated.
Mm.
I mean, you can definitely do that. I mean, I'm not here to judge or say, but as long as you are expressing, and as long as you're not keeping it
Yeah.
inside, regardless like what is exactly your situation at this moment, and regarding what's like how is the lockdown is affecting you. Anyways, like it's how creative perceive the current affairs, you know. And you can do it always, even
Mm.
subliminally, not necessarily directly about the pandemic.
No, that's true. And okay, we have 2 minutes, which I'm gonna end with a question that's for you,
Mhm.
Marwa. And
Thank you,
this is the last
everyone.
one I think we can take. Thank you.
Hi, Majid. Um,
Speaking of your street videos, how do you decide this is a good moment to capture? I've seen Marwa go on autopilot really most of the time. It's me trying to grab Marwa away from
I
places.
know.
It was literally where he'd be walking in the streets with Marwa, it'd be, Marwa, stop, you need to move
See,
now.
no,
And sometimes almost getting into trouble sometimes because she'd stop
I
everywhere to
remember
take
that. I remember
pictures.
that. I remember that. And that was like the lesson of the day. And I remember like you once tell me, Mama, keep your phone down because that's not the right place to take a
Yeah.
photograph. Yeah, I mean, okay, I read again. Speaking of view street videos, how do you decide? I really, Majid, I mean, literally do it very organically. I don't really think. I'm not saying that just being, oh wow, I'm cool. No, I'm not. It's just like literally, I just go with the flow, you know. And sometimes, I don't know. I just get internally moved. Um, I think I'm kind of a reversed. I really look into what's happening inside me at that specific moment when I hold up my camera and take a photograph. It's just something. It's an urge, you know. It's really an urge that something, you know. Sometimes it's a voice in my head. Oh, take your camera or take your phone. I do that here a lot in the streets in Riyadh because you know until now I don't drive, but I am in the back seat, which is I can kind of control what I film, and I just grab my camera and put some music and just like go with the flow. I don't know what does that mean even. I have loads of these videos of streets of Riyadh specifically, and just like, you know, zooming in and out. Honestly, what does it mean? I have no idea. But it's just pressing.
I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's what's I'm just gonna end with an observation that I've seen when you talk to Marwa about something. There's an image that pops up, and all of a sudden she's pulled out her phone and she still remembers an image from 4 years ago. I don't know how she remembers when she's taken this. There are
I
thousands of
have a
pictures
studio
she
here.
just keeps in her cloud. And then from 4 years ago, she knows exactly where to look for it, and it's back out
Yes.
there. So yeah, the visual memory is
Yeah.
amazing. I think we'll have to end, Marwa. It says we have
Thank you
just a few
so much.
seconds left because we've been going for an hour. And thank you all
Thank
for
you all,
joining
my
and
friends.
stay safe and
Yeah,
well. Thank
everyone. Thank you
you.
for joining us. Thank you so much, V and Radio.
Thank you.
It
Thank you,
was amazing,
Marwa.
guys.
Thank you to Tribe
Be
as
safe,
well.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.